Could a single word unravel a life? Karen's voice sliced through the bar studio's calm, her tone sharp enough to make the mirrors tremble. Pathetic, she spat, glaring at Mia, the new teacher, whose delicate frame quivered at the bar. The class froze, their breath caught in the humid air. Karen, broad and imposing, stood at the center of the room, her face twisted in disdain. Mia, barely 25, had been demonstrating apply, her form graceful but unpolished, a beginner's earnest attempt. Karen's eyes gleamed with something cruel, a spark that promised chaos. The studio, usually a sanctuary of soft music and synchronized movement, felt like a courtroom now, with Karen as judge and executioner. Mia's cheeks flushed, but she straightened, clutching the bar for support. "Let's continue," she said, her voice soft but steady. Karen snorted, loud enough for the sound to bounce off the walls. "Continue? With that form? You're embarrassing yourself." The other women, Lila, a quiet accountant with a knack for blending into the background, and Sarah, a fiery single mom who never missed a class, exchanged glances. Karen had been a storm cloud since she joined the class 3 weeks ago, her complaints a daily ritual. She mocked Lila's stiff joints, sneered at Sarah's worn leggings, and now targeted Mia's teaching. The room crackled with unspoken tension, each woman weighing whether to speak or stay silent. Karen's tirade didn't stop. She stepped closer to Mia, her bulk casting a shadow over the younger woman. "I've taken classes in Manhattan," she boasted, her voice dripping with superiority. "Real studios, not this strip mall nonsense. I could teach this class better blindfolded." Mia's eyes glistened, but she held her ground, guiding the class into the next move. Karen mimicked her, exaggerating every step into a caricature, her movements sloppy yet deliberate, drawing stifled gasps from the others. Lila's hands tightened on the bar, her knuckles white. Sarah's jaw clenched, her eyes narrowing. Something was brewing, a silent pact forming in the spaces between Karen's words. The class trudged on, Karen's barbs relentless. She criticized Mia's music choice too slow. She scoffed at the studio's décortique. By the time Mia called for a water break, the air felt thick, oppressive. Karen didn't pause, though. She followed Mia to the corner, where the teacher was adjusting her ponytail, and leaned in close. "You know, you're not cut out for this," she whispered, loud enough for Lila and Sarah to hear. "Maybe stick to something less public." Mia's shoulders slumped, but she turned away, refusing to engage. That's when Sarah stepped forward, her voice low but firm. "Enough, Karen. Leave her alone." Karen wheeled around, her face a mask of indignation. "Excuse me? I'm giving constructive feedback. Someone has to." Lila, usually silent, surprised everyone. "It's not feedback," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "It's bullying." The word hung in the air, sharp and undeniable. Karen's eyes widened, then narrowed. "Bullying? Me? I'm just honest. Unlike you spineless lemmings." She gestured at the class, her hands slicing through the air. The studio felt smaller, the walls closing in. Mia, still silent, looked at her students, her eyes pleading for peace. But peace wasn't coming, not yet. Sarah crossed her arms, stepping closer to Karen. "You think you're better than us? Prove it. Show us your perfect form next class." Karen smirked, sensing a challenge she could dominate. "Oh, I will," she said, her voice a promise of triumph. "And you'll all see how it's done." The next class came too soon. Mia stood at the front, her usual warmth dimmed but present. Karen arrived late, her entrance theatrical, her workout clothes ostentatiously new, the tags still dangling. She took her spot at the bar, her chin high, ready to perform. The class began, and Mia guided them through warm-ups, her voice steady despite Karen's occasional huffs. Then came the momenta-complex sequence of plies, relèves, and balances, one Mia had taught the previous week. Karen had bragged she'd mastered it, and now all eyes were on her. She started strong, her movements forceful but lacking grace. Sarah whispered something to Lila, who nodded almost imperceptibly. The twist came swiftly, unnoticed by Karen but felt by everyone else. The class had a plan. As Mia called out the sequence, Sarah and Lila subtly shifted their positions, crowding Karen's space at the bar. It was slight a nudge here, a foot too close, the rebut deliberate. Karen, focused on her own performance, didn't notice the coordinated effort. The music swelled, and Mia's instructions grew faster. "Hold the releve, strong core," she called. Karen, determined to outshine everyone, pushed into the pose, her balance shaky. That's when Sarah, with a glance at Lila, gave the tiniest push, a brush of her elbow against Karen's arm. It was enough. Karen wobbled, her arms flailing, and crashed to the floor with a thud that echoed. The class gasped, but no one moved to help. Karen's face reddened, her eyes darting between shock and rage. Karen scrambled to her feet, her breath heavy, her face a storm of humiliation and fury. "You did that on purpose," she screamed, pointing at Sarah, who stood calmly, her expression unreadable. Lila, still gripping the bar, looked away, her lips pressed tight to hide a flicker of satisfaction. Mia rushed forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Are you okay, Karen? Let's take a moment." Karen swatted the air, dismissing her. "Don't patronize me. This was sabotage." The accusation hung heavy, the studio silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. The other women, only a handful, remained in the small class, shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between Karen and the others. Sarah raised an eyebrow, her voice cool. "Sabotage? You're the one who said you'd show us up. Looks like you tripped over your own ego." The word stung, and Karen's face twisted further, her hands balling into fists. She turned to Mia, expecting support, but Mia's face was unyielding, her usual softness replaced by something harder. "Karen," Mia said, her voice low, "you've been disruptive since you joined. This isn't about one fall. It's about how you treat people." The truth landed like a slap, and for a moment, Karen seemed to shrink, her bravado faltering. But only for a moment. "You're all against me," Karen shouted, her voice cracking. "You're jealous because I know what I'm doing." She stormed toward the door, grabbing her water bottle and knocking over a stack of yoga blocks in her fury. The clatter punctuated her exit, but not before she spun back, her eyes locking on Mia. "This isn't over. I'll have your job for this." The threat lingered as the door slammed behind her. The class stood frozen, the weight of her words settling like dust. Mia exhaled, her shoulders sagging, but she rallied, turning to the group. "Let's finish strong," she said, her voice regaining its warmth. The women nodded, their movements subdued but unified, as if Karen's absence had lifted a fog. Days passed, but Karen's threat wasn't empty. She returned, not to the studio, but with a lawyer's letter delivered to the studio's owner, accusing Mia of fostering a hostile environment and demanding her termination. The letter also claimed physical injury from the fall, citing emotional distress and negligent instruction. The studio buzzed with whispers when the news broke. Mia, already stretched thin by low pay and long hours, felt the ground shift beneath her. She met with the owner, a no-nonsense woman named Ellen, who read the letter with a frown. "This is ridiculous," Ellen said, tossing the paper aside. "But we need to take it seriously. Karen's got money and connections." Mia nodded, her throat tight, unsure if she could weather this storm. The twist deepened when Lila, of all people, stepped forward. Quiet, unassuming Lila, who rarely spoke, had recorded the entire class on her phone, not intentionally, but as a habit to review her form. The footage, grainy but clear, captured Karen's mocking, her exaggerated movements, and the moment of her fall. It showed Sarah's subtle nudge, but also Karen's aggressive stance, her invasion of Mia's space, her relentless taunts. Lila hesitated, knowing the video could escalate things, but she shared it with Ellen. "This isn't right," Lila said, her voice firm for the first time. "Mia doesn't deserve this." Ellen watched the video in silence, her expression darkening. "This changes everything," she said. The confrontation came at a community meeting Ellen called to address the issue. Karen arrived, flanked by her lawyer, a slick man in a tailored suit. The studio was packed not just with class members, but with other instructors and regulars who'd heard the drama. Karen stood tall, her face smug, ready to dominate. Mia sat quietly, her hands folded, her eyes fixed on the floor. Ellen took the floor, her voice steady. "We're here to clear the air," she said, holding up Lila's phone. Karen's smugness faltered as Ellen played the video. The room silent except for Karen's recorded voice mocking Mia. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the footage showed Karen's fall. The nudge clear but contextualized by her behavior. Karen's lawyer tried to interject, claiming the video was inadmissible, but Ellen cut him off. "This isn't a courtroom yet," she said, "but it's proof of who's creating the hostile environment." The crowd murmured, some nodding, others glaring at Karen. Sarah stood up, her voice shaking with anger. "You humiliated Mia for weeks. You threatened her job. And now you're playing victim." The room erupted in agreement, voices overlapping. Karen. Agreement, the tide turning against Karen. Her face flushed, eyes darting as she realized the room was no longer hers to command. "This is outrageous," she sputtered, but her voice lacked its usual venom, drowned out by the crowd's growing resolve. The lawyer whispered something in her ear, his expression tense, but Karen shook her head, defiant. She wasn't ready to back down, not yet, though the cracks in her armor were visible to everyone. Ellen's voice cut through the noise, calm but unyielding. "Karen, your behavior was documented. It's not just about one incident, it's a pattern. We have statements from multiple class members." She gestured to Lila and Sarah, who stood with quiet strength, their faces resolute. Lila, clutching her phone, spoke up, her voice steady now. "You made Mia feel small, Karen. You made us all feel small. That video shows who you really are." The words hit like a spotlight, exposing Karen's cruelty in stark relief. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a chorus of support for Mia, who lifted her chin, her eyes meeting Karen's for the first time with unshakable resolve. Karen's downfall was swift and undeniable. Her lawyer, sensing the losing battle, advised her to drop the complaint, but Karen's pride refused to bend. She doubled down, threatening to sue the studio for defamation, but the evidence was overwhelming. Ellen had consulted a lawyer of her own, and the studio countersued, citing harassment and intentional disruption. The video, combined with written testimonies from Sarah, Lila, and others, painted a clear picture. Karen's fall in class, orchestrated though it was, became a symbol of her self-inflicted ruin. The legal battle drained her resources, her wealth, once a weapon, now a dwindling shield. The studio's case was airtight, and Karen's lawyer eventually convinced her to settle out of court, a humiliating retreat. She paid a hefty fine to cover legal fees and studio damages, her reputation in tatters. The community, once intimidated by her bluster, now saw her for what she was, a bully who'd pushed too far. Mia, though shaken, emerged stronger. The ordeal had tested her, but the support of her student Lila's quiet courage, Sarah's fierce loyalty reminded her why she taught. She stood in the studio weeks later, the mirrors reflecting a class now doubled in size. New faces drawn by the story of a teacher who'd stood her ground. "This is our space," Mia said at the start of class, her voice clear and warm. "A place to lift each other up, not tear each other down." The women nodded, their movements in sync, their energy a quiet rebellion against cruelty. Lila, once invisible, now led stretches with confidence. Sarah, her fire tempered but bright, smiled at Mia, a silent vow of solidarity. The studio hummed with purpose, a sanctuary reclaimed. The story of Karen's fall spread beyond the studio, a cautionary tale whispered in coffee shops and group chats. It wasn't just about her defeat, it was about what it meant to stand together. Mia's classes grew, her teaching bolder, infused with a quiet strength born from surviving the storm. She'd learned that grace under pressure wasn't just a pose but a way of being. The bar, once a prop, became a symbol of resilience, each ply a step toward healing. The community, forged in that tense confrontation, carried a new truth. No one, no matter how loud or powerful, could break a spirit rooted in kindness. And in that truth they found not just victory, but purpose.